Hello, Steady On friends, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode 95, and I'm delighted to share with you a special fiction-focused conversation with my best friends and reading buddies, Lisa Wood and Maria Jessup, along with award-winning Christian romance author, Julie Lessman. Julie has been writing romance in the Christian genre for over a decade, but the journey to be comfortable in her lane has not been a smooth one. Julie's writing doesn't shy away from passion, and she's taken her share of criticism over that. But she is committed to writing this way because the message she wants to communicate is that passion is a gift from God, but we will miss much of that gift if we do not make decisions in our passion that align with His guidance and instructions. One of the verses that Julie mentioned during our conversation is Psalm 139:23, which says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts." I think there are two reasons to pray this verse. First, we need to recognize where we are outside of God's will and repent. And second, we need to trust that God will reveal to us when we are outside His will and when we are not. Sometimes we're not, even if others say that we are. Following God when others are critical is tough. Believe me, I know that well, which may be why I was drawn to Julie and her story. I believe Julie's message of purity is a much needed one today. And I'm glad she shares the message. Acknowledging the decision for sexual purity doesn't mean there's no desire, but it does mean our deepest desire is to be right with God. I think you'll love this chat with Julie. Lisa, Maria, and I had read her debut novel, A Passion Most Pure, in preparation for our time together. And we do talk about the book, but we cover a lot of other ground too. Let's listen in. Good evening, Steady On community, and welcome to our quarterly virtual book club. We are so excited that you are here. I'm Angie Bauman, and my two fiction reading besties are with me tonight, Lisa and Maria. Ladies, thank you for always doing this with me. I love you, and I love reading with you, so thanks for being here. And you're supposed to say you're welcome.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure.
Oh my gosh. We are blessed.
I'm Detroit. No. And we are so excited to be here with Julie Lessman. Julie, who is an award-winning inspirational romance author. And we are going to unpack a little bit Julie's, what number book was this in your writing, Julie?
That was my debut novel.
Okay. All right. I thought that was right. And then I questioned myself. So her debut novel, A Passion Most Pure, and we all have it here. And Lisa has, Maria always has hers on her electronic device.
She's got the other too.
I know. Look at her. She's ready. She is ready to go.
My kind of gal.
I know. She's our star student. Every class has to have one. Okay, so Lynn, we already have a viewer, Lynn. It's so nice to see you tonight. We're so glad that you are here to talk to Julie and
Lynn Fairstein.
It is, yes.
Lynn,
yes.
I love you to pieces.
Yeah. So Lynn, if you have questions for Julie, do not hesitate, because she'd have to be really rude and just sign out and, in order to leave us. And Ramona is here. Good to see you, Ramona, from Girlfriends Talking. So this is so great. So yeah, we're so excited to talk to you about this. And I will say that I have read the books incorrectly. Julie has this series. So Passion Most Pure starts really a series of 6, but it's 2 series of 3. And you just correct me, Julie, when I get it wrong. But years ago, there was a free download of number 4, which is number 1 in the second series. And so I actually started with number 4. And when I read 4, A Hope Undaunted, do I have the title right? I don't have that in front. Yes. I thought this is one of the best Christian romance books I have ever read. And I continue to think about that series of books. And it's been several years ago, probably, I'm going to guess maybe 8 or 9 years ago, that I first read that one. That time frame might be right. And I still think about those characters and a couple of scenes in particular where the Lord really just got a hold of my heart and taught me something through your writing. And so we're just so delighted to have you here. And we want to talk about your book, A Passion Most Pure, but we also want to talk about kind of some of the things behind the book. So yeah,
I got a lot.
But let's start with this idea of you writing. Your tagline is passion with a purpose. And I want to hear about that a little bit. You and I have had a chance to talk about it just a little bit ahead of time. And I'm just really appreciative of sort of the way that you approach writing in a Christian romance genre, which not all Christian romances are the same, right? We understand that. But what is your sort of philosophy or mission as you write Christian romance?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I never read romance. I mean, I read Catherine Marshall Christie way back when I was a young gal. And then I just, as a Christian, I just read the Bible and nonfiction books. But then as I got older, I started reading romance and like Nora Roberts and stuff like that. And I just went, this just doesn't do it for me. I need God in the middle. So I went to the Christian market, and the first book that I read had a kiss on the last page in front of 7 people when he asked her to marry him. And I went, this is not, young women today are not going to relate to this. I mean, because this is not how it is today. And somebody's got to tell them that God's precepts work, because I know I'm 71 and they worked for me since I've been 23 when I came to the Lord, and they have changed, revolutionized my life. Yeah. And the books, every lesson in there is something I learned in my marriage. Absolutely. Almost everything. I'm telling you the truth on that. And so I thought, there's something wrong here. I mean, I'm a passionate woman. I call myself a CDQ, which is a caffeinated drama queen, because honestly, I used to pipe guest initials in their twice baked potatoes. I'm like so over the top. I can't even tell you. And I'm really glad I am, because I put all that drama and angst into my books instead of my marriage, which is awesome. My husband appreciates it. But, I just thought, this is not reaching me. And so I decided to write my own. And I actually started writing Passion Most Pure when I was 12 after reading Gone with the Wind. I wrote 300 pages of this basic novel, okay? And then I just put it away, because people looked down on romance back then. So as I was a businesswoman, I didn't want people to think, I was a romance reader. So, but when I was in my 50s, I remember I was in a beauty shop reading a 2001, I think it was, a Newsweek cover article about Christian music, books, and movies were on the threshold of exploding. That was right before Mel Gibson came out with Passion of the Christ. Remember that? And he rocked Hollywood back on their heels. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was the beginning. I'm sitting there reading this, and something in my spirit said, now's the time to finish your book. And I went, one I wrote when I was 13, but I did. I sat down a month later and I wrote it, and that's how it started for me. It was, I feel like it was God really directing me.
So I have a follow-up question, but before that, I want to tell you that Lynn says she has a question that I'm going to get to in just a second. I'm going to get to your question, Lynn, in just a minute. Ramona says you look amazing at 71, and also maybe she says Ramona, maybe she should write a book. Yeah. But here's a follow-up question I want to ask you before I get to Lynn's question, and that is, so you talked about how this won't speak to young women today, but that God's precepts work. That's what you were saying, right?
Oh,
yeah. And so what is the message that you're trying to communicate that's about God's precepts? What are you hoping that young people will pick up from reading the sexual tension and the decision-making process around that? What's your message?
Okay, well, it's pretty much the message of A Passion Most Pure, which was Deuteronomy 30. It just amazed me that God says, I set before you today life and death, blessing or curse. If you choose life, I'm going to, bless you here, 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 here. If you don't, you're going to encounter all these curses, Yeah. And the thing that got to me was, you go on down after reading that, and it's like he's begging us. He goes, I lay before you life and death. Choose life. It's like he's sitting there and begging you, getting on his knees and begging you to choose. And why? Because he wants to bless us.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not because he wants to push us around. It's not because he wants to be God and lord it over us. He wants to bless us and protect us. And that's the only way to do it. I was 23 when I came to the Lord, and I just was on fire for him. And so I would go out with guys, they were Christian guys. They said they were Christian. And I would say, well, you got to know I'm a Christian. There's going to be no funny business. We can kiss, but I'm sorry, nothing else. Well, they take me out, and it seems like they never asked me out past 4 dates. And that was fine with me, because I see God's precepts as an insurance policy. They keep the wrong guys away, because they'll leave. And But this one guy I really liked. And I called him up, and I normally didn't do that. I said, I just got to know, we had a great time together. I like you. I thought you liked me. He goes, Julie, I really liked you. He says, we had a great time. He says, but the bottom line is, he goes, I can find a girl I like and have fun with and get sex too. And I thought, okay, but that's my point. I mean, it protects you. God's precepts protect you. Okay. They also bless you, because when I met my husband, I told him the same thing. So much so that on the fourth date, I said to him, well, I really enjoyed getting to know you. Thanks so much for asking me out. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, most guys don't take me out past the fourth date because I don't put out, And he says, I don't care about that right now, And I want you to know, I just celebrated 42 years of the best marriage just about that I've ever seen on the planet. God's truth. And that's why Marcy and Patrick's marriage seems so great. It doesn't seem, it is, because I've lived it. So that's everything that I'm talking in these books is something I've lived, and I know for a fact is true.
And how does your husband feel about that? Can I ask, if a lot of what your characters have experienced is your own, like either heart turmoil or even passion? I mean, even passion is vulnerable, right? Yeah. For us to be vulnerable with each other, in that sense, it's like looking into a little bit of your life.
Yeah, it really is. My husband, I think it was on the third book, he comes downstairs and he goes, Julie, I just cannot believe our whole life is in this book. And then I had a friend over for dinner, and he was talking. She had read A Passion Most Pure, and she goes, I really loved A Passion Most Pure. She says, there was just one thing that didn't ring true. And he goes, what? And I still can envision them sitting there in the kitchen, standing, talking. And she goes, Marcy, she goes, she's such a sweet gal. I just can't see her turning on Patrick like that, in the bedroom scene. She says, I'm just not sure that was believable. And he's sitting there drinking a Coke, and he takes a sip of the Coke and he goes, believe it. Because it happened to us.
Yeah.
That scene, not with all the details that I have in the book, but a similar situation. He didn't go to the bar. Let me just say that right now. So, and then there was one other story that I want to tell you that's really cute. I was at a family reunion, and my sisters and brothers, I'm from a family of 13. And I was so tired. It was time to go home. So I went over to Keith. I said, babe, he was talking to my brothers-in-law. I said, Keith, I'm really tired. Can we get going? And he goes, and my brother-in-law goes, yeah, Keith, you better get going. You're chapter 16 tonight.
She needs more material.
Yeah.
But does it bother you ever? Like, does that make you feel like people don't take your work seriously? Because I know I have enough author friends, and I don't write fiction, I write Bible studies, but I know what goes in to a manuscript. I know what goes into editing. I know how long that process is. And I know I don't write love scenes, but I know from other authors that write Christian romance, like writing love scenes, even kissing, that like make you feel something as the reader, like that takes hard work. And so when people well-meaning people either sort of, laugh that off or don't take romance seriously, I don't know, is that discouraging to you ever?
It used to be a long time ago. That's why I didn't really do it till I was in my 50s, But you know what? God just showed me. I mean, overnight, he just said, you know what? I created you for this. I always used to beg him to take 40% of my emotions away. I'm such an emotional person. I was a little kid at 8. I got mad at my family, ran out in the snow barefoot and knelt in the snow and prayed for God to send them all to hell. I mean, emotion. I'm like drama queen city. Okay. And I would beg him my whole life, God, can't you please just take 40%, because not only do I feel all these things, but when I get the 1-star reviews and I would get beat up, and Satan would beat me up like crazy.
Absolutely.
That contest. Yep. Oh, your sales are not as good as, and I have a story with me and Julie Clausen that I could tell you, but I'm not going to go into it because I know you've got a set line of questions in your head. But seriously, I am what I am. I'm so emotional. And he showed me when in my 50s, I created you for this. Do not look down your nose at romance. I am the author of romance, the true author of romance. And he created passion in romance through a Song of Solomon. He said, so don't you do that. This is what I created for. So
These ladies and I were just at 6:00 on Tuesday nights. We do a Bible study for a half an hour. And we were just in the book of Job, Job 42:5, where Job says, I had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. And we were just studying that verse. And when you're talking, it reminds me of what we were just talking about, because what you're describing is this moment with the Lord where he reminds you of something. He reminds you of a truth about who you are and who he's created you to be.
Yes.
That then when we know that, like at that deep level, right, then we can, our emotions can come from that place, or our decisions can come from that place, instead of how our emotions would dictate them.
And they insulate us.
Exactly.
Although my first one-star review, I literally cried from gravel where I worked all the way over across the street to the parking lot, just sobbed.
Yeah.
But it insulates you, because I do get attacked. You know what? I'm doing what he wants me to do, and I know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like because we are so inundated with sex selling and lust being a marketing tool, or, just so prevalent in our culture, that we confuse passion, in line with God's directive passion as lust. And from a Christian standpoint, it's almost like, I think people too often think that any kind, like even pure passion, if you will, is lust and is shameful, when nothing could be further from the truth. So yeah, exactly. I appreciate that message so much. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is about faith, and you've talked the character faith, because you've talked about this a little bit. Yeah, you talked about this a little bit already, but she really holds on to her commitment to live a life in Christ's example, even though the temptations. And I'm wondering about you in your own younger life too, but Faith doesn't say no to a sexual relationship because she doesn't want a sexual relationship, right? She says no because this is the way that she understands this is her choose life. Her no actually is about the Deuteronomy 30 choose life. And I just wondered, what have you learned about your own faith walk, if you will, through like Faith's decisions, or other characters even?
Well, what I thought about when I wrote that, when you asked that originally, I just basically learned what I said before, that God's morality is there to protect and bless us.
Okay.
That's what he wants to do. And people don't get that. They think he's out to push them around, and I just don't get that,
Yeah.
So that was, I pretty much answered that before.
Yeah. So Lynn has put her question back in here, and she wants to know if you have a favorite spiritual scene and a favorite kissing scene.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you share would you share one of them, either one?
Yeah. By the way, on my website, I have a ton of my favorite spiritual and my favorite romantic scenes, but juxtapositioned against each other for almost all the books. Okay.
I'm going to put that link in as we're chatting. Yeah.
You guys haven't read it yet. It's book 3. It's A Passion Redeemed. And it's a Billy Graham character, hero, who's so godly. He's just amazing. But he's got a dark secret. And towards the end of the book, something just breaks him because it gets out. And he's just crushed, and he just gets bombed out of his mind. And his good friend Colin comes and sobers him up, throws him in the tub, and they've got a good friend. I can't remember if Father Mac is in Passion Most Pure. Is he? Do I introduce Father Mac at all? You'll see him. He's a great priest. Anyway, that scene is amazing to me because he doesn't even want to talk about what's his name? Colin calls Father Mac and says, come over. And Brady he just doesn't want Colin there, but he'll talk to Father Mac. And the scene between him and Father Mac, just to this day, it pierces my heart, and it reminds me constantly that it doesn't matter how bad we are, because he talks about David. And he talks about King David, how despite the fact, he was an adulterer and committed murder, he was a man after God's own heart. And you know why he was a man after God's own heart? Because he was passionate for God. Let me repeat that word, passionate for God. And God said, this guy's my guy. He's like me. He's a man after my heart because I'm passionate for you.
Yeah.
Wow. And when I went through that whole scene, to this day, I tear up and it just pierces my heart. So that's my favorite spiritual one. My favorite romantic one isn't a Hope and Darn It. Of the Daughters of Boston series, book 2, A Passion Redeemed, is my favorite. Okay. And of the second series, Winds of Change, book 1, Hope and Darn It, is my favorite and my favorite book I've ever written. And I think it's because over the books, you really get immersed into the O'Connors. You become part of them. You become part of this family. You watch them grow, especially Charity. And
good.
Maria's not a big fan of Charity now.
So
not yet.
Going to change. If you were to continue, I am going to bet money that by the time you get to book 5, she'll get there before that. She's funny. She's a hoot. She makes me laugh in every scene she's in, even the sad ones. So you just wait till God gets
I'll hold on.
Yeah. Give her a shot. Do you like Mitch?
Yes.
So Colin was your favorite?
Yes.
But again, you're the one that's not a super romance reader.
I am a romance reader.
Oh, okay.
But I was still Team Colin, so and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, Mitch is my favorite. Him and Luke, who is in a Hope.
Luke.
Okay. Oh my gosh, Luke.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You should read the books after that because
number 4
is in there in the next book. The honeymoon, Katie and him. Oh, you're gonna love it.
Oh, good.
Anyway, the scene with Luke and Katie is, Luke and Katie, I'm not going to say anything, that they know each other from the past and she hated his guts. Mm-hmm. And so she finds out she's got to work with him. And she's got a boyfriend, but she starts to get attracted to him and she just hates it. She despises it. And so she's daydreaming one day thinking, what am I going to do? I can't quit the job. I don't want anything to do with him. And he sees her staring out the window and he comes and he goes, Katie, are you okay? Well, he thinks that he offended her in some way. And the scene that transpires, he goes over and he goes, Katie, and he turns her and he lifts her chin and then he sees it. He sees the fear. He's never seen fear in her eyes before, ever. But he sees fire, he sees fear and he feels attraction. He senses it. And it shocks him because he's been crazy about her his whole life and she thinks he's dirt. And so he's never, and so when he realizes she's attracted to him, it's like, he can't help it. He kisses her and she melts in his arms. And then he pushes her away and says, Katie, we can't do this, because he's a real firm Christian. She goes, we can't do this. He goes, I'm sorry. And she just stares at him and the POV switches and she thinks she doesn't know whether to kiss him again or just slap him silly. And she slaps him silly and starts screaming at him and calling him because he was a poor kid. He was an orphan. And so she calls him all kinds of names and he gets angry. He goes, okay, you want to do this? Let me show you, and then it probably wouldn't be approved of by today's, standards with a lot of women that, you don't force anything on a woman, but he's ticked off at her. And I'm from the era of the old Clark Gable movies where the men were, if they wanted to kiss you, they did. I know it's not necessarily right, but I'm sorry, I'm old and that's what I grew up with. Okay. And so he kisses her. And then he pushes her away and he goes, there, you go hang out with some riffraffers, because she called him riffraff anyway. And he goes in and slams the door. She's like shaking and she's sitting there and he called her the sorriest person alive, or she called him the sorriest person alive. And she goes, she was the sorriest person alive, because it is just absolutely my favorite scene.
It is a good scene. I remember. Yeah. There you go, Lynn. There's her favorite scenes. I think that's so great. Yeah, it is a really good book. So and I'm going to let Lisa Maria weigh in on this too, because we talked about this actually before we got to talk to you, because one of the things that I think can be a struggle, and I'm wondering how you work with this, Julie, is so the men all have these weaknesses, right? And I think sometimes in a romance book, we don't want our men to have weaknesses, but these men, you were saying about Patrick goes to the bar and Colin is I don't know, just a jumble of bad decisions. And then we've got this whole two men that might kind of like both sisters, which is just like, I don't know, that's not so great either. So like, what do you think, girls? Either one of you, just like, did that give you any angst as you were reading the men and their color?
Well, yeah, the whole sister act going on was just in Charity. Oh my goodness, I did slap her, and
I had a reader write me and ask me to slap Charity for her, and another one wanted to see her killed or maimed.
Okay, I'm not that bad, but yeah.
I did think it's interesting that those men, though, they all wanted to be a part of that family. There was something about that they got drawn into, and they loved the family. You know, it wasn't just the girls, it's the family. There was something special about that family.
It was the spirituality. It was
Absolutely.
the closeness. It was the God-centered family and relationships. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to write about. Yeah.
It is a beautiful thing to write about, because I think that's what we long for in family, a family that like when you mess up, not if, because it's like a when, like when you mess up, there's still community, there's still welcoming, there's still affirmation, there's still love. There may be consequences, relational things that have to be mended and healed, right? But there is this understanding. And I think a lot of us don't have that. And so I think, you know, for those men, I do want to be a part of something where I know I'm accepted and I know that I'm welcome here and that I'm loved, you know? So,
and I'd like to also say, a lot of that stuff, first of all, it was way back in the 1916 through 32 or whatever, where it goes. And, you know, men were like, I had so many people complain to me, oh, they're such chauvinists. Hello, we're talking back then when it was chauvinistic. That's the way it was. And you know, I'd like to also point something out. I don't have the statistics. I have a ton of statistics here, but I don't have the one on pornography. But if you think the so many men, even in the church today, that is such a crisis. Okay. And you know, I had so many people write in reviews, oh, the men are nothing but lustful. Yeah. Hello. I mean, look at what we have today. And to these men, to take them from that to Christ and how Christ can change your life. And he does. I've seen it over and over again. Men and women.
You know, I think about the scene where Colin and Faith, where she's talking to him about God and her relationship with God. And he's like, he's got this interest in it because there's something in her, right? Like he's attracted to her. He wants to be with her, but it's more than just physical. And he's realizing that, right? Like there's something in you that's bigger than you. And I don't understand it, but I want it, you know? And I think, and we all have that power to be able to be that kind of witness with our decisions, with our choices, the way that we continue to show up, you know, Faith's commitment to herself, to God, to her parents, to her sister, even when she was, you know, really struggling, is something and it wasn't without hurt. Like she really hurt, you know, and she continued to make the decisions she felt were the most honoring for the most people.
Yeah. It's funny because my husband, I met him at work, and he was this hot looking guy that all the women were talking about. I was just not okay. And I'm just walking by and I said hello to everybody, the janitors, the wall. I didn't care. I was very friendly. And he stopped.
I can't imagine.
He stopped one day and I remember in front of the secretary to the president's her desk. And he says, hey, where do you go at lunch? And I'm going, what does he want to know? And I go, well, I just bebop. I go to prayer meeting. I go see my sisters. I just bebop, you know? And he goes, well, do you want to go to lunch? And I went to lunch with him. And he told me later, he said, after that lunch, I told my cousin, I just met the kind of girl I want to marry. Because he said, Julie, he said, he was engaged to some gal right before me. And he broke it off. He said, I knew more about you through one lunch than I knew about her in a year of being engaged. Wow. He said, you knew where you were going. You knew what you wanted. God was the center of your life. And that's all there was to it. And that's true. That really happens, you know?
So I'm going to put Maria on the spot. Maria, is it okay if I do this? Because Maria, and you can shut me down when you want to, but Maria's husband, they talk openly about this. When he proposed to her the first time, she said no. Maria, tell
Yeah, we were we were a couple months into our dating, and he asked me, he said, could you marry a non-Christian? And no, that's not really an option for my future plan, but here we are kind of dating, and he had kind of got the sense, kind of like you were just describing, that, he had seen something in me, and that really made him pause and reflect. And that eventually led him to making his decision to know Christ. And then he asked again later, and the answer was yes. So and again, God honored that. Has blessed us with a beautiful marriage and in a platform to be able to share him and what it's
but
like.
I always think about you, Maria, in that story, and I think about Faith and Colin, and Julie, and what you're saying, with your husband, even saying, like, after the fourth date, I guess, if this is what you want, then then I'm done with this, because I think that's so brave. I think most of us, we will compromise when we are afraid we're going to lose something we don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that these stories, the kind that you're writing, Julie, the one of your life, Maria, your witness in your story right here, are examples of not necessarily, you won't necessarily lose something. And are you brave enough to say, if I do lose it, it's not what was best for me, right, even though it will hurt me, even though it will be something that I, but that God ultimately will bring into my life what is best for me. It's just this huge, like, holding things loosely that I think a lot of us, especially, how old were you, Maria, when that happened?
1920. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think most of us, especially at that age, I think we don't have maybe enough examples or enough teaching, maybe, which is another reason why, Julie, I think these kind of books are so important. I think what you're doing is really important. It has a depth that it's easy to overlook, but we see it. See it.
So appreciate that.
I'm going to tell you, Julie, too, I'm going to encourage you to go. Lynn is asking probably more questions than we have time through, but maybe, I bet Julie will go back in and put answer some comments.
Well,
maybe
after we're done too. I'll respond to all comments.
So don't worry, Lynn. I think we'll get to all of those things too. But I want to talk just real quick about Mrs. Gerson as we talk about spiritual mentoring. And I know that because I think sometimes a more godly person can be thrown into a story, but doesn't quite fit. Sometimes I've experienced that where I'm like, okay, this is like the Jesus person or something, except for I felt like Mrs. Gerson's, I felt like she did fit very well. So, good job to you, for working her in a way that was very believable. But also there was just this steadiness that even the O'Connor family, O'Connor, right? You'll correct me if I'm right. Yeah. Okay. So all of a sudden I thought I questioned myself. They were steady, but not steady. Right. But Mrs. Gerson's steadiness was it helped them steady. I don't know. What do you have? Did you, or do you have people like that in your life that Mrs. Gerson was based on?
I have. My Mrs. Gerson was, I worked at Merritt's Travel in St. Louis, and I was a wild child of the 70s. It was mini skirts and platform heels, long hair, lots of eye makeup. And I was a 4-letter word gal. Every other word on my mouth was 4 letters. Okay. Anyway, she comes walking in. I had a pretty good job, and she had a lesser job than me. She was divorced. She had a baby to take care of, and I couldn't stand her guts. I couldn't stand her. And I told my boyfriend, I was living with a guy at the time, kind of on and off, 3 days a week, and, I couldn't stand her. And one day, she's humming. We're alone in the bay. It was a long bay with desks and stuff. We're alone, and she's humming. She comes in humming. Now, mind you, I had a boyfriend who had a vet, a boat. I was taking an advanced writing course at Washington U and acing it, and I wasn't even showing up for half the classes. I just say that to say I was successful in that, even though it wasn't much. I had my own apartment. I was, I'd been in the witchcraft, transcendental meditation, drugs. I mean, you name it. I was in it. Okay, I was a mess, and she was humming every day. And I used to wake up every day. You guys are not old enough, but there was a song by Peggy Lee that went, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is?" She's wondering, is that all this is? Well, I would wake up every day feeling like that, thinking, what the heck? I have all this stuff going for me. Why is she happy and I'm not? I remember being really ticked off. So I'm at my typewriter, and one day we're alone. And I just look up, I go, just what in the blank makes you so blank and happy all the time? She walks over to my typewriter, looks down, and she says, I've been praying you would ask. And I went, oh, blank.
One of those.
Because I was agnostic. I was raised in a Catholic family, that real devout Catholic family, but I was agnostic. I didn't care. Maybe he was around, maybe he wasn't. I didn't care. I used to think they should burn Bibles in hotel rooms. I got so ticked off at the Gideons for putting Bibles. I mean, I was a hard case. Okay. And, I said, your God. So I went to lunch with her. And I remember in the cafeteria looking at your God, let me tell you what your God has done for me. My parents my parents abuse me. My siblings make fun of me. I said, that's what your God's done for me. What am I supposed to do to believe in him? Because I don't. And she says, well, just, God gave her all the grace in the world. She goes, just go home and ask him to come in your heart and prove himself to you. And I said, fine. I go home. I look at the ceiling. I said, she says you're there. Okay, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Can't prove it by me. I said, but if you're there, make me know it. And so I started going to lunch with her. Oh, it was such a case. That woman, God gave her so much grace. And I can't tell you if it was a month or 3, but one day it just all clicked. I was so astounded, that God loved me. And, he just softened my heart. He took that heart of stone and made a heart of flesh. And I remember I used to read tarot cards. I was really good at them. I mean, I told my sister that she was pregnant. Nobody knew, just so many things. I went to get an astrology book at the bookstore. And the minute I touched the spine, I had become a new Christian. God just said no. And it was like it burned my fingers, and I knew. And one thing by one thing, like I had my tarot cards on the seat of my car, and I didn't want to give them up. I didn't. I had fun at parties. I was the life of the party because I would do everybody's cards, and my car wouldn't start. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I was going to be late for work. And I kept trying to start it, grind. And something in my head said, there was a dumpster in front of me. Throw the tarot cards away. I thought, I can't throw this. And he said, throw the tarot cards away. And I went, and I kept trying to do the car. And so finally I did. I threw the tarot cards away. I got in the car and it started. And he did that with everything for me. He was amazing. And I became on fire for him. And I've been that way ever since.
It's so crazy how he invites us to trust him. Like, it's just, and that's what that is, like one at a time. The other things that you put your hope in, Julie, right? The other things that you put your trust in. I want you to trust me with these things, and And so you're able to do that in your stories. And he does that in our lives. Yeah. So much. So I know that Deuteronomy 30, and I want to tell you, somebody else said hi. Tracy says, I love all your books. Thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Thanks,
but
Tracy.
I know Deuteronomy 30 was an important part of this book. And you do such a beautiful job of weaving scripture in, and even like, there's so much scripture in here that it's not like quoted scripture, but there's just like all kinds of verses and things in here. So it was really good, but I just
does that.
So much.
All of a sudden brings it to me and I go, oh my God.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, is there, just like with your writing in general, a verse, for your life that's just really important to you? Is there something that you'd like to share with us of something that you go back to time and time again, maybe?
Okay. Of course, Deuteronomy 30, that, but the scripture that I love with all of my heart, and it's changed my life dramatically, and I really recommend it. And that is Psalm 139, 23 through 24. And it's, search me, O God, test my heart, know my thoughts, point out anything in me that makes you sad, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Because what we do, and you're nodding, I can tell you guys are nodding because you've probably done this too. Praying that prayer every day it should come with a warning. Because when I was a new Christian, I started praying it, and oh my gosh, he was slapping me against the wall left and right. And I'm going, hold on. I actually stopped praying it for a while.
Don't ask for what you don't want. Yeah.
He was showing me so much stuff, I couldn't handle it, But I'm telling you, oh my gosh, the most important thing that I've learned in my whole life is that he has to be on the throne and nothing else can be. And when I wrote A Passion Most Pure, it just shot out the gates. Revell said they've never had a faster fiction release in their up to that point. They said, this is going to be groundbreaking here, because it was different than what anybody else had done. And what happened was it shot off like a rocket. And then I started getting the bad reviews and people saying that it was smut, and stuff like that. And my numbers started dropping, and it never did really pick up from that point ever again. I mean, I did okay, but it wasn't like what I thought. And it was what he showed me was that I had my writing and that success in the contest and the book ratings, I had that. He was on the throne, but it was right at the foot of the throne. It was a God. It was a stronghold. Mm-hmm. And I spent the last 13 years desperate to get rid of it. I fasted for a month, some food, Amazon. I mean, I did everything. I prayed. I have prayer partners. We prayed all the time. God, please, please, please take that away from me. Take it, like St. Paul did, take that thorn away.
Exactly.
I didn't want it. I wanted a lobotomy with that part taken out so I could enjoy writing for God and do what he wanted me to do. But this other stuff creeps in. And it's been, I'm ashamed to say, it's been 13 years. And just this year, I can feel that he's totally, I mean, I've put it on the altar like Abraham. Mm-hmm. And he's the one I want to please now. He's the one that I want to write for. And he's one I want to run to. Like, sometimes if I get kind of antsy, I think, well, need people approval. So I go and I look at my ratings, or I read a review that's really
It's
good.
Another version of the tarot cards. We all do it in different ways, Absolutely. Right? I'll put my trust in these numbers and over and over, he calls us to say, no.
Yes.
I appreciate your vulnerability around this so much, because in different ways, we all do exactly what you're talking about. Go ahead. Thank you. Yes.
And the thing is, what I'm learning in the last year, and I'm old, I've been doing this since I'm 23, but it's just been, I mean, I must be a slow study. I don't know, but I think a lot of what's going on right now is the Holy Spirit is going to do a major work in America and around the world. And he's already doing it in the remnant. There's the ecclesia, there's a remnant of us that love him with everything in us. And we don't want those strongholds, and we're begging him, please. And it's happening. I see it with me. And I've just given up on, I'm doing it step by step. I'm not allowing myself to go on Amazon on Monday through Friday. I will on weekends, because I run a lot of promotions and I just want to see how they do and stuff like that. But that's the beginning of me giving that up and turning over. And, I'll be honest with you. I absolutely love a glass of wine at 5 o'clock. And I find myself, I found myself running to that and running to Amazon for my comfort, for my joy, for my satisfaction. And it was just a stench in God's nostrils. And, he said, Julie, I've been praying. That's why search me, oh Lord, test my heart. And he's been showing me that I have to, and I am, and it's amazing. So he helps us.
I love that. And I think that verse is so good on both sides, because it helps us recognize when he's revealing a stronghold or an idol, something like that, something else we're putting our trust in. But also, I think it helps us stand firm in what you were talking about earlier, in that, like, he's called you to write passion with a purpose. And so sometimes I think when we continue to pray that, he can remind us, no, it doesn't matter what other people say. I'm the one that tests your heart. I'm the one that will reveal to you. And we're okay. Like, I have those things with him too. There are things that I believe, or that I participate in, or that I speak on, that, like, everyone doesn't like it, everyone doesn't agree, but he's like, no, we're okay. Right. This is between you, and this is an issue between man alone. Like, this is not an issue between you and me. And when we continue to pray something like you're saying, I think he wants to affirm also in us that we're on he shows us where we're on the wrong path, but he also affirms where we're on the right path. Mm-hmm.
He so does, Angie. He so does. I wanted to just point out something to you. I was so desperate that about 4 years ago, I went on the fast for a month, where I didn't go on Amazon. I didn't do email. I didn't eat like breakfast and lunch, and I gave up wine. I was desperate. Please, you got to show me. You got to help me. And on the 20, because what I wanted to know was, I was to the point where I wanted to leave the Christian market. because I was getting beat up left and right. And here I was trying to do something that I thought God wanted me to do, but I was getting beat up. And I just said, God, maybe I need to go in the secular market, maybe. That's why I was fasting, to pray, to ask him if that's what I needed to do. And one day on the 23rd of that month, I'm reading my Bible, and I had a Bible that had two columns. One was NIV, one was Passion. I never read the Passion. Never. I never did. I was used to the NIV. But one day I opened the Bible up and my eye went straight to the top of the Passion thing because I saw the word passionately. And here's what it said: wait passionately for God. Don't leave the path. He'll give you your place in the sun. And I knew right then and there, that was my answer. I was not to leave. No matter how beat up I got, I needed to stay the course, because there was going to come a day when he was going to use this, because purity is important.
We are so glad that you do. We're so grateful for you and for this time with you. We loved your book. I know Lisa and Maria are looking forward to, and me too, are reading the next ones. And then I've already told them, I'm like, you don't need to stop, because 4, 5, and 6 are just so good
4, 5,
too.
and
Yes. And so they're so good
they're
too.
incredible. I think.
Yeah. They're really good. They're really, really good. So, and I will link that blog post, because you sent me the link to it, and I will link that in the comments also tonight. Okay. Yes. So anybody that's watching now or on the replay can read that thing, and it's the blog post in its entirety. And then that will be fabulous. Before I let you go, I have one more question for you, because I always like to end on this. And that is, would you just give us a peek behind what's going on in your life right now? And that is, is there anything that you're studying or reading, listening to, watching that's filling your heart with joy right now? Would you share it with us? I love to share resources.
Well, the number one thing that gives me joy and direction is Jesus Calling.
And good. Yes. Yes.
I that's my devotional every single day. I read it, then I take those scriptures and I read the whole chapter. That's how I get my Bible reading in.
Yeah.
So that's set aside. But the other thing that I'm just kind of a freak lately, I have hearing aids. And so I constantly have things in my ears, podcasts and things like that. Have you ever heard of Flashpoint? Okay. Flashpoint is a Christian news show on the Victory Channel.
Julie, I cannot tell you, you are such a gift, and we're so grateful for this time with you. And I know those watching and listening have been grateful to have this time with you as well. And Lisa and Maria, thanks for always reading with me. And so we will let you go, friends, for now. And until next time, peace.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
A big thank you to Julie Lessman and my lifelong friends, Lisa and Maria, for joining me in this conversation. Julie's message about saying no to self to say yes to God is one that applies to so many areas of our lives. And I love the way she reminds us of that as she unfolds a beautiful love story. Psalm 139:23 again, this time in the message. Investigate my life, O God. Find out everything about me. Cross-examine and test me. Get a clear picture of what I'm about. See for yourself whether I've done anything wrong. Then guide me on the road to eternal life. If you'd like to support the ministry of Steady On, there are 3 things you can do, and they're all free. First, you can subscribe to the podcast. That helps a ton. Second, you can rate and review this podcast, because that helps other people find us. And lastly, you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter by visiting the website livesteadyon.com and clicking the orange newsletter button at the top. The link for that is also in today's show notes. I always welcome comments and feedback, so please feel free to reach out to me anytime. You can email me at steadyonpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.